Wonderful. Okay, welcome, folks. Sorry, we had some technical WebEx difficulties. So we'll probably extend a little bit beyond 11 o'clock with this webinar, but thank you for joining this webinar today that'll feature 4 mayors from communities that have successfully implemented their Downtown Revitalization Initiative Award. I'll refer to the program as the DRI in the future. They've implemented this DRI award in their own ways, catered to their own unique conditions and communities and needs in their community. This collection of mayors also represents a broad spectrum of community sizes, conditions, markets, geographies, and demographics. So I think you'll get a good picture of the many different types of communities that have been through the DRI process. We're conducting at DOS a series of educational webinars that feature your peers. We do a lot of outreach and education from our office with our consultants, but we've found that it's very helpful for folks to hear, especially people who are thinking of applying for the DRI and its more rural offshoot, New York Forward, to hear from the people that have been through this process. In this case, the 4 mayors we've chosen today. These mayors and their local stakeholders and residents have realized the overall vision of the DRI, which is broadly to create vibrant, diverse downtowns that leverage private and public investments beyond just the $10 million DRI award. They developed a vision or a grand strategy, and they picked the right projects to carry out that vision and strategy. These projects synergized with one another so that they're not just quality projects unto themselves, but collectively they achieve something exponentially better than just the sum of their parts. We're going to use the directions on the compass today to determine the order of speakers. We're waiting for Mayor Barlow, our northernmost DRI in Oswego, to join, but we'll start with down south, our southernmost DRI, and that's Westbury, Long Island, with Mayor Peter Cavallaro. We'll then head out west to the southern tier to hear from Mayor Dan Mendel from Elmira. And we're going to wrap it up with Mayor DeStefano from the Mid-Hudson region, the town of Middletown. So why don't we kick it off with Westbury. Mayor Cavallaro, TOD, transit-oriented development, is a big issue in the Hudson Valley and Long Island. You've successfully zoned for TOD, but also implemented almost all of your projects in realization of creating a transit-oriented development in your community in Westbury. Can you tell us a little bit about that original vision, the zoning process, and how it led to your successful project implementation?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. It's Peter Cavallaro. I'm the mayor of the village of Westbury, which is about an hour east of New York City out on Long Island. We were one of the first, one of the group of the first DRIs that were granted in 2016. So we kind of refer to ourselves as the guinea pigs for the process. A lot of the processes, I guess, that have developed along the way, were a result partly of our cutting our teeth, I guess, with the state and the various agencies in the state. But we were thrilled, in 2016 when we were granted our DRI, and the state developed a really good process for moving the process along, which included a lot of community engagement, selecting or helping us select a partner who would do the design work and helping us through the entire process. So we actually, through our community engagement process, surfaced probably 40 or 50 project ideas. We had hundreds of people who were engaged, different stakeholders in the community engaged. And ultimately, we distilled that down to the 7 projects that were funded. As Paul stated, one of them was our TOD rezoning project, where we rezoned about 52 acres of land, light industrial property of land, just adjacent to our train station. and adjacent to our downtown. And I'll get back to that, in a second. But we had 6 other projects that were funded. One was an Arts Council project where we were able to buy and rehab a building for the Arts Council for gallery space and meeting space and whatnot. We had a major Main Street improvement project where we essentially took our downtown Main Street and redid the aesthetics and the walkability and the pedestrian and traffic safety on the street. We did a facade improvement program with our downtown businesses where we did matching money, a 75-25 match, 75 match to their $25,000 25% investment to do facade improvement for their properties. And we had a community center upgrade project, a pedestrian plaza project near our train station, and then an open space in our TOD. There was an allocation of money for open space preservation in our TOD. The first one that we actually completed, and at this point we've completed them all, and we have a ribbon cutting, I think, coming up in September to mark the end of the completion of all of our projects. But the first one that we completed, which was probably the most transformative project, was our rezoning near the downtown and near the train station. One of the main, we have a major train station in our downtown. And at the same time as this was happening, the Long Island Railroad was doing some redevelopment work on the railroad, third track project. Some of you may be familiar with that. And so this kind of was hand in glove with what they were doing there. But we have 52 acres adjacent to our train station, which was light industrial. I would say it was somewhat blighted in terms of the only part of the community where you had that kind of raw, I would call dirty type of uses, which really needed to be upzoned for the future. And so we looked at that property and we did a study, and we essentially implemented a turnkey rezoning to encourage and to incentivize the redevelopment of that property into transit-oriented development. And part of that kind of plays into an issue which is a regional issue here on Long Island, but probably also throughout the state. And the governor has looked at this, which is the housing issue. And so there are several communities on Long Island which have tried to use transit-oriented development to promote multifamily and other types of housing around its train station. And we were able to kind of implement that. And that was one of our goals, was to utilize the train station and the transit hub that we have there to incentivize developers to try to redevelop that property. And so we already have several projects which have been approved. We approved the zoning on that in 2019, I believe, and that was sort of right before COVID hit, and there was a little bit of a pause. But we have 2 projects that we've approved, and we have other projects that are in the pipeline. And frankly, we would not have been able to do that rezoning, which was obviously a major study that was required, environmental analysis that was required, and then obviously drafting the zoning to do that. We would not have been able to do that without the DRI funding. And I say that with respect to all of these projects that we did. As local officials, we all have a lot of ideas and things that we'd like to accomplish, but it's usually resources that sort of act as the barrier to accomplishing everything that we want to do. Well, we would not have been able to do any of these projects, at least on the time frame that we did, and certainly not the transit-oriented development rezoning that we did without the funding through the DRI. So for us, receiving that grant in 2016, was a tremendous boost for us. It enabled us to accomplish a lot of our goals. It enabled us, I think, to address the essence of the DRI program, which is to bring transformative projects to local municipalities and give them the resources to do that. So we're big proponents, and we're just as happy now that we've been able to actually see the realization of what we had envisioned through the process coming to an end, because now we see how valuable it was to have received that. I think as people who may be looking to apply for a grant, I would suggest that you kind of have to, I think as Paul indicated earlier, look, every community is different. Every community has different needs, and every community has a story to tell. And I think you need to kind of, in your grant process or your grant application, you have to tell the story of your community and what the needs are. And I think you have to be specific as to what the projects are that you think are going to take your community and your downtown to the next level. You know, we had done some things before the DRI kind of put us in a good position, I think, to apply for the grant and get the grant. But I think it's telling that story to your grant committee that will help you get over the line and hopefully get the project done. I have some suggestions, I think, as to how to implement, you know, once you're lucky enough to get the grant granted. We can talk about that later if anybody has any questions about that. But, you know, I guess what I would say is, you know, when you're applying for the grant, tell your story, really identify the real needs that you have. And if you're lucky enough to get the grant, um, it'll be a great thing for your community. And just, I would just say that working with the DOS and the other agencies has been tremendous. As I said, we were kind of the guinea pigs, so I think everybody was learning along the way. But it's a collaborative effort, and so you have to be communicative along the way. Because of COVID and other reasons, we did extend some of the time frames that we had to kind of complete everything that we had to get completed. But I think the important thing is that once you start is to show progress, continue to move it along. And I think the state has been very amenable to working with us, and I think they will be with you. So we're really happy that we're at this juncture.
Great. Terrific advice, Mayor. And the governor has spoken about transit-oriented development a lot in the context of meeting our housing goals too. And I know that you just launched a huge project down there that'll create, I'm understanding, nearly 200 units of housing near transit. So congratulations on that. And I'd also, just before we go to the next speaker, I'd like to point out to folks that are not in areas near commuter rail, the MTA area, that transit-oriented and the development can apply to rural and suburban areas too. You can build around transit. We've seen it in a couple of our DRIs, especially in Oneonta, where we've condensed our focus around what they call the Centro, which is a bus rapid, centralized bus rapid station. So TOD is not just confined to downstate. So thank you, Mayor. We're going to move up to the great north, Lake Ontario. Mayor Billy Barlow, we were just out in his community, the governor and Secretary of State Rodriguez, to celebrate the completion of their DRI projects. Mayor Barlow, tell us, we've heard from you a lot, and that's because you've done a terrific job up there. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey, your strategy, and your accomplishments through the DRI?
Sure, and thank you for including me. Oswego won the DRI in 2016 in the first round. When we applied for that funding, we had 6 major projects in mind. And when we won the DRI, really the premise of our application was to accomplish 4 things. The first was to use the $10 million with the state to leverage as much funding as we possibly could. The second was to introduce housing into our community. Being a SUNY community, local landlords tend to cater to SUNY students, and that left a whole population here in Oswego kind of out in the dark to find quality housing here, especially in downtown. Third was to connect our waterfront to our downtown. As most people know, Oswego is positioned on Lake Ontario. It is divided by the Oswego River. Oswego is never really fully capitalized on the waterfront property that we're fortunate enough to have. So we thought if we could connect our waterfront to our downtown, that'd make downtown more attractive and attract people and residents. And then lastly, we needed to develop vacant or underutilized space in our downtown area. So that was kind of the 4 key components to our application and ultimately our vision for downtown. We were lucky enough to win. And after going through some of the planning exercises with the state team and another consultant, we ended up settling on 12 projects that we wanted to do. And going back to those 4 key components, certainly the 12 projects accomplished exactly what we set out to do. So of our 12 projects, we had 4 of which included housing, and that was a mix between market rate housing and affordable housing, income-based housing. Two of the major projects combined introduced about 200 new units to our downtown for different types of income, anywhere from approximately 60% AMI to market rate. And part of that was to leverage other state programs like the BOA tax credits and our LWRP program to all part of the project. So we converted our backup DPW garage, which we no longer needed, and that's one of the housing developments right on the waterfront. Another one was a shopping plaza that all the stores had moved out and the parking garage was falling down, so we were able to demolish that and build one of the other housing units. And then the two others housing units were market rate. One is a real interesting story where there were 4 tax parcels right next to each other, all owned by different individuals, some vacant, some had buildings on them. So we brought all the owners together. One of the owners bought the other 3 parcels, demoed the whole area and built a mixed use building, which is, I'm proud to say, has been all of our housing projects have been totally sold out with a waiting list. So that's good. And then the other project was right on the corner, or the marquee corner in downtown, which was a 1-story blighted building, was demoed and is now a mixed use with a Southern Cookhouse on the bottom, 20 market rate apartments, and then a rooftop lounge on top, which has been really successful. Beyond that, we did 2 planning projects. We constructed a pocket park on what is known as Water Street. Used to be just a 6-car parking lot. Now it's a stage where we have bands every Friday night, and we put up some tables. It's a cute little park where people go, and you can often see it, people having their morning coffee or having cocktails in it after dinner or during dinner. And then we did a complete streets program on Route 104. Oswego, unfortunately, has if you count parking lanes, a 6-lane highway that divides our downtown and prevented people from crossing one side of downtown to the other. So our complete streets project was a $1 million project that brought in some green space, some bricks, some landscaping, and just made that corner easier, more safe, and more pleasant to cross while dining outside. So all told, we took the $10 million from the state's DRI and leveraged it for another $65 million total invested into our core downtown area. Also, I want to point out what the DRI did intentionally or unintentionally is created spillover. So even some projects that weren't in our DRI put pressure, I think, on other property owners in downtown to dress up their buildings or do an improvement project. So all told, if you look at this, what I would consider the spillover effect from the DRI, we've had about $100 million in private investment pumped into our core downtown area since winning the DRI. And the results are noticeable to the naked eye. I mean, the Oswego skyline really has changed. You have more people, more activity in downtown than ever before, all thanks to the DRI. And then finally, I just want to say that we're proud to be the first municipality in the state to complete our DRI, and particularly proud of the fact that those original 12 projects I mentioned are the 12 projects that ultimately we saw through and did happen. So we didn't have to scrap a single project or alter the plan at all, and luckily it's working. So I thank the state and all the folks at DOS, especially, for all the help. It was a great experience for me, and it's truly transformed this community.
Great. Thanks, Mayor. You mentioned that you are a waterfront community. I should also highlight that you're a Erie Canal front community. We've funded so far 25 canal communities through both DRI and New York Forward. Just an added element of reconnecting to a major part of your history, your maritime history. And I should also point out that DRI projects come in all sizes. And from my opinion, Mayor Barlow, your least expensive project, the Pocket Park, really opened up your entire downtown to the magnificent canal front and riverfront. So all these projects, big and small, fed into your strategy. So really appreciate the partnership with Oswego. And you also really masterfully integrated a whole bunch of programs, not just at DOS, but others. So I would emphasize to the attendees here to highlight your planning efforts, whether they be through the DOS. Some of you have done local waterfront revitalization plans and brownfield opportunity plans, but just emphasize planning as a platform, as a launching pad for successful DRI and New York Forward implementation. So let's go out west to the southern tier, one of the more rural regions in the state, and hear from Elmira Mayor Dan Mendel.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me on this panel today. As with the other mayors, we received our DRI back in 2016. We as well, as everybody did, community engagement, as well as a consultant with the help of the Department of State to get our plan going. One of the things that we had in place before we got the DRI was our master plan. We had actually developed that back in starting in 2015 and completed that just before we applied for the DRI. So that went hand in hand with our DRI plan. And as the other mayors have said, planning is a big thing when you're submitting your grant. So we put our DRI to work when we received it. We were excited. We also were hoping at that time to receive a new medical school in our city, LECOM. So with that, our first major project that we were going after is actually a 100 West Water Street development, which was 50 market rate housing apartments with commercial on the bottom floor. The DRI actually helped that project get completed. They ended up filling that apartment complex, which has been a huge success. Some of the other projects that we also did with our DRI is we also used money towards our Lake Street Bridge, which was dilapidated and was scheduled to possibly even be demoed or whatever else we could do with it. We actually turned it into a pedestrian bridge, which connected the south side with our north side. We actually have the Chemung River that runs through the city of Elmira. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the city of Elmira, it's a population of about 26,000. So we're a smaller city, smaller community. Some of the other projects that we used for as far as infrastructure work was West Water Street, which runs right by our 100 West Water Street project that was completed. Some other things that we did, we put money towards our Clemens Square. Now, what we were looking for was connectivity throughout our downtown area, and this helped us accomplish that. Our Clemens Square is a piece of property that sits between what now is 100 West Water Street and our parking garage. And we were able to redevelop that and renovate that. And actually has spurred on additional investment into that Clemens Square property. We had an investor buy the property underneath the parking garage and has put in some office space and is looking at putting in new restaurants. So that actually helped us get that going. We also did work on our parking garage that was finally completed recently. And we also implemented a new zoning plan called form-based code to help streamline development throughout the downtown area, which has been very successful. We also then invested a lot of our money in our rehab projects to help some of these other businesses rehab their properties in the downtown area. So overall, we've been very excited on what we've accomplished. Very happy with the DRI and the success we've had. And we've seen a lot of growth in our downtown. It's unbelievable. I know Mayor Barlow had said the amount of people and how their downtown has become alive again. Ours is similar. We've got additional restaurants that have invested in the area now. And we also had another market rate housing project built by LECOM, which has really made our downtown, it's truly transformed the downtown. The DRI, the initiative of this was an excellent idea. Words I can't say enough about how much it's helped our city and how far we've come. You're talking about a city that has not seen any very little development, I should say, over the past couple decades. And now we've seen in our downtown area, similar to Owego, close to $100 million worth of development occur in our downtown. It's just a truly amazing transformation. You know, we were so happy with it that we're going to actually look at applying again this year for another DRI. It's been very successful in bringing Elmira back from, basically having very difficult times over the past several decades. So I'd like to thank the state for all their help and all their assistance. They were very helpful through this entire project.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And you make a good point. Existing DRIs communities are eligible to apply again in a different area of the downtown. I'd also like to make a shameless plug for a program that I oversee, the Smart Growth Planning and Zoning Grant Program. You mentioned, Mayor, that you did a form-based code. We fund those sort of codes. We are in an open application phase right now through the CFA, state CFA. Again, a great way to lay the groundwork for good implementation and projects. I forgot to congratulate Mayor Cavallaro. They won 2 Smart Growth Awards, one for their zoning and another for one of their anchor projects. So planning and zoning are common themes here: connectivity, not just the connection among projects, but the physical infrastructure that connects up the projects and brings all the many pieces of downtown together. So coming back east to the Mid-Hudson region, Mayor DeStefano from Middletown, early on caught my attention that you saw very early results in interest in investments in your downtown, an increase in tax revenues, which of course feeds back into the revitalization process. So tell us about your story.
Well, thank you for inviting us to be part of the discussion. Our story begins with pre-DRI, where we were making incremental gains similar to what other communities were making, local investment, but not enough. We're an old railroad town. We're 30,000 people plus in 5 square miles, so we have a pretty dense population. And our downtown 20 years ago really was nothing to be spoken about. I mean, people avoided it. The city, in its infinite wisdom years ago, put in a one-way traffic loop that would avoid people coming into the center of town. So we made many poor decisions in the past, the city did, that contributed to the decline of downtown. So we started making these incremental gains, local investment, but what really pushed us above to convince our own legislative body and our public that downtown was still worth investing in was the DRI announcement. And planning was a big part of it. I know when the announcement came out first, the $10 million, and right away the state said, well, we're taking $300,000 to hire a planner, and we're going to pick that planner, and you're going to work with that planner. We had little arguments over that at the beginning, and it was probably the best move that was made by the state in regards to Middletown, was bringing in those outside eyes to take a look at our community. We thought we were on a good path, but we didn't see everything that they saw. And so BFJ was the local planner. They came in. We came in with 20 projects, worked that down to 6. I think 4 of them were funded, but we focused on some of the traditional areas that others have. Facade, we had about $1 million in facade, and it was almost $1.6 million in actual work that went out. But we wanted to take the open space that we had and make people feel more comfortable coming into downtown. And that was our issue, how people perceived it and the realities of in our inner city. So we did a lot of work on open space. And we had the Heritage Trail, which is a county trail that was at 5 miles outside of the city going south. We wanted to make that connectivity into downtown Middletown. And so we worked very closely with the county. They extended the trail up here, and that combined with the DRI money, we were able then to get the excitement of the public. We now had their attention. Once the DRI was announced, we've had about a 25% turnover in property sales in downtown. About $50 million worth of property was sold. Investment, and that was our goal, was not only to get this $10 million, but was to get private investment into downtown, which was lacking over many, many years. So we made that choice to focus on open space, make people feel comfortable, make our legislative body feel comfortable with appropriating more money. Because my goal from the beginning was to make this $10 million $100 million, both in public and private investment, and we've exceeded that. We've had about $50 million in private investment come into the city, and that's just an acquisition. We just recently had a company, Ganjing World, that purchased a vacant building for the past 20 years. They've put millions of dollars into the building. They are investing. They have 100 employees now located in the central business district. And it's all because of the planning that was done from day one regarding the DRI and how we were going to approach this attracting private investment. We've also used it to leverage public money. And we wanted to make the city more bikeable, walkable. We brought in experts to give us ideas on how to do that outside of the DRI project, and we combined different funds. We took our 10 million in the DRI funds, and we had a streetscape proposal for about $2 or $3 million. But then we also accessed some federal transportation money of about $30 million citywide, majority of it going into downtown, making every intersection ADA compliant, new sidewalks in downtown, granite curbing, new lighting. And our goal from the beginning was to make people feel comfortable, create open space, connect whatever open space we have, connecting our neighborhoods, using downtown as basically the center of a bicycle with wheel, with the spokes going out into the neighborhoods. And that's what we're trying to create and continue to create. With that came the additional projects down the road of infill, where we have an old bus station. And someone mentioned before, I think it was you, Mr. Byer, about accessing the TOD money for bus stations. And we're working on a project now that would add about 150 units of housing into this 3.5, 4 acre spot, along with a new transportation center. So the excitement of the elected officials is one thing, but this DRI was able to excite the private sector into making investments into our downtown, and to also, believe it or not, push our common council into funding other DRI related activities. So for example, we took an old Woolworths building that was empty for 25 years. And we now made that into a viable 3 businesses, totally redid the building. The city operates it. There's a rent subsidy in there, 3 viable businesses. And that was the impetus for developing this one whole section of North Street in our city, which has been abandoned for many, many years. And now the property owner across the street will be putting in 21 units of housing, first floor commercial, and we're seeing that more and more with some of the larger buildings in our downtown. So using that money, to leverage those other funds, and to also get the city council to invest additional funding, which we've done. We've probably put in about $3 to $4 million of our own funds into some of the, for example, the constructing of a pavilion, a skate park into the area right-of-way property. And so everything that we need to do to bring people into our city, make them feel more comfortable. We've had 18 ribbon cuttings, I think, within the last year. There's not a vacancy in downtown to be had, both residential and commercial. The only commercial vacancies are the property owners that want to keep their property vacant for whatever reason. They're not even interested in leasing it at this point. We don't know, what the rationale is, but the fact is that we have create a lot of excitement. We've had $70 to $80 million of private investment come into the downtown, along with the purchase of that $46 to $50 million of property acquisition. And we've made commitments that our city council then saw that it's important to keep this asset, to protect it. We now pick up garbage 7 days a week in our downtown area. We want to make sure that people feel safe, that it's clean, and that we have post-DRI investments that we need to make. And street sweeping, public safety, police visibility, all those things are a result of the DRI and the commitment of the $10 million. And that $10 million has just exploded in all these other communities, and to multi-millions of dollars investment into our area. So it's a good story. It's a good process. The state worked with us very closely. It's the public process is important, and the feedback from the public. And like I said, we had local buy-in, not only with spending the 10 million, but making additional investments into our downtown with local funds and seeking other grants. And we've had a lot of success in that area. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor. We see another example here of connectivity in your community, not just within the downtown, connecting up the different pieces, but you mentioned the connectivity to the surrounding trails and nature opportunities, plentiful in your area and really a key component of your recreation and tourism industry. And it's also great to hear all of the public monies that you've leveraged. You know, we talk about leveraging private investments. DRI is just such a paragon of public-private partnerships, but congratulations on the DOT money and all the other public monies that you've leveraged. So thank you, mayors, really appreciate it. We're going to, Steph Lutter is our revitalization specialist, but also our tech person here. He's going to monitor, he's been monitoring the chat box. Steph, are there any questions for the mayors?
Currently have one question, so just a reminder, if you do have questions, to put them into the chat box. So our first question is, could the Elmira Mayor please provide more information about improvements that were made to the parking garage with DRI monies?
Yes, actually, it was really not structural work, but it was putting in the better lighting, windows into the parking garage, which were needed to lighten the parking garage up. The actual infrastructure work that needs to be done, we're actually using some of our ARP money to do that. So the parking garage was strictly just for lighting and windows, pretty much. Does that answer their question?
I think so, yes. We have another one that's open, so anyone can take it. Question about common challenges that you faced in the process.
As far as Elmira goes?
Anybody?
Well, for Elmira, the biggest challenge for us obviously was COVID. It slowed down our process. And of course, I think everybody struggled with that a little bit. Our other issue was our initial plan for the riverfront was a boardwalk, but DEC kind of threw up a roadblock in that, so we had to come up with a different plan, which we did. But other than that, the process for us went along very smoothly, and again, the state was very helpful. But they were just a couple of roadblocks right there for Elmira.
I can add to one mistake that we made was that we thought it would go a lot quicker, and not that it went, but with COVID, it obviously to slow it down. But we borrowed the $9.7 million up front, and we thought this project was going to move like within a couple of years, and we wanted to be prepared to move. We didn't know how long it was going to take to get reimbursed, because it is a reimbursable program. It's not, they don't give you $10 million and tell you to go out and spend it. So we borrowed too much money up front, and we lost a few bucks on our, obviously paying interest on that. So there, how that money comes back, it comes back pretty quick, but we didn't know that at the beginning because we were in round number one. So I would be very careful about how much money you borrow up front or need to borrow, if any, to implement the project.
And I would just add, if I may, I agree with what both previous mayors have said, but two things. I would take a look at your zoning code before, if you plan to apply and ultimately win the DRI, you'll need to just take a look at your zoning code, because some of the projects that we did, we had to go through that process, which we started a citywide rezoning process anyway, which needed to be done. But even if we didn't plan to do it anyway, probably some of the DRI projects would have prompted a rezoning of the downtown, because Oswego never had mixed use buildings as big as we have now thanks to the DRI. So we had to work on that. The other challenge, at least from my end, because our DRI projects, the majority of them were led by a private developer, we had to keep that private developer engaged and ambitious and make sure that they were going to do what they said they were going to do with the money in the project. So along the way, through supply chain issues, inflation, COVID, we had some developers come to us and say, throw their hands up and say, I'm not sure if I'm going to proceed or finish this thing. And, we would just go back in and explain the importance and how, really all these projects relied on one another and got it all through. So.
Yeah, just one suggestion I would have, just as based upon our experience, is, whereas Westbury is a small municipality, we have a relatively lean staff, and I think that when you're trying to manage multiple projects that are sort of outside your normal scope, it does put some pressure on your staff. So what we did was ultimately at the beginning we decided to basically put one person designated as sort of the project coordinator for all of the projects to kind of make sure they were all moving and making sure all the reporting was done properly and whatnot. I think you can use some of the DRI funding for, technical assistance and outside staff to do that. We tried to do it with our own existing staff. And so I just think that needs a little bit of thought as to how you're going to manage that process along the way. And as I think was mentioned, I think by Mayor DeStefano, it is a reimbursement, so there is another aspect to it. We tried to build into the contracts that we had and that we let out on the public projects that the payment on those funding on those projects was conditioned on reimbursement and timing of reimbursement. So we tried to tie the actual payment to the contractors and other parties to our reimbursement cycle. And I think that that has to be built into your procurement process. And, obviously whoever you're selecting has to be on board with that. But I think if you do that and you think about it ahead of time, you can kind of manage that pretty well.
Right, we've got several more questions. I will just say quickly that the program requirements have changed since round one. Parking improvements are now only fundable if tied directly to a new development, because we got a couple more questions about that. This is one maybe one of you could take. Is the DRI reimbursement program? Yes. If so, how did your community finance projects in the short term? Does anyone want to take that one?
I just reiterate what I said. We really didn't finance the projects. We on a very short-term basis, we did just out of our own resources, a fund balance or whatever. But we did try to tie the payments to the contractors with the reimbursement cycle. So many times, it was not really a long period of time between the time that we had to expend the funds and the time we were getting reimbursed.
And we
I
did
could
borrow.
just interject one point. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor Barlow, but Oswego had a strong partner in Pathfinder Bank, a community bank that was there to help when needed. I'm not sure if you availed yourselves of their offer, but it seemed like early on they said, if payments move slowly, you need help from us, we're there for you.
Yeah, good point, Paul. I should have mentioned that earlier, but at least in 2016, once you win the DRI, the state, you get a consultant, you get a state planning team, and then you also, at least I appointed a local planning committee, and there's kind of the parties that come together and help develop the final plan to put into action. So, and one of the individuals that I appointed was the local president of a community bank here in Oswego County. And so I would just keep in mind, if you do win and you appoint a local planning committee, think about who you would put on and make sure that, you want their feedback, but that they can be a resource, because this individual, because we had so many private developers responsible for projects in our DRI, this individual and organization stepped up and said, we are happy to be a partner here. We'll offer lower interest rates. We'll work on terms to make sure these projects get done. And that we took them up on 3 of the 9 private projects. It was a good thing we did, especially with COVID and the supply chain issues and inflation, because some projects did exceed the original budget.
We're encouraging DRIs to partner with their community banks, the smaller banks in the region that really know the projects, the communities. So keep that in mind. I can see a future webinar on the role of community banks.
This is a good one for folks who are considering applying for DRI. Who did you engage with during pre-planning or the grant application process, and how did you engage them?
We basically, I think, as again, May DeStefano said, we had been doing some prior redevelopment work on our downtown, so we had a pretty good idea as to the story we wanted to tell. A lot of the community engagement, obviously came after the process. As Mayor Barlow indicated, you do put together a local committee of, a dozen or so people that kind of engage, and then you have community touch points. But before the application process, we kind of knew what our priorities were, and amongst our staff and our board, we came up with the application and told the story that we wanted to tell.
We had a business improvement district that was created 25 years ago. And that was an important player in our developing our plan in our downtown, along with our economic development office, and handled everything internally. We didn't use any outside consultants to develop the plan.
And Elmira didn't either. Elmira, we basically used our community development as in our Elmira downtown development. We also partnered with Southern Tier Economic Growth, which is one of our local organizations, and also our county planning department for the initial plan and application.
I was in a bit of a unique situation in that I took office in January of 2016. It was a couple weeks later, the governor had the state of the state and announced the DRI program. So I went back from Albany to Oswego and got with the city economic development office, which is an office of 3. And we were going to apply because we had nothing to lose, but we needed to construct a vision for our community anyway, and for our downtown anyway. So we figured if we go through this exercise and lose, at least we have a vision and know what we want. So it was very much homegrown and in-house in Oswego as well.
There's a couple questions here about pushback from the community. Whether you had any, how'd you overcome it? Did it cause any interruption, or were there any public engagement strategies that helped sort of prevent that?
Well, I don't know. We weren't trying to prevent it. We wanted to have as much open dialogue with the public as possible. And BFJ, the consultant, actually arranged those events, and they were all very public. They did a lot of outreach, going to community colleges, going to the YMCA, going to different public events to get feedback, and also inviting people to the panel discussions. So we try to encourage it, because at the end, everyone wanted to be heard. And once they were heard, they all got behind the plan that we submitted, and had no pushback after the plan was implemented and approved.
And similar with Elmira, we did a lot of community engagement and meetings in conjunction with our consultant who scheduled the meetings, and we didn't have any pushback either. A lot of people embrace this idea, and we're just happy to see something happening in our downtown.
Same in Oswego. We had minimal pushback. We had 4 public engagement sessions where, when we had our 12 projects that we thought we were going to settle on, we had 4 separate meetings inviting the public. just to come and learn about it, to see some renderings. And one meeting was even a kind of public engagement where we gave people who showed up different stickers, different color coded stickers to go around and basically rank each project, which, as you can imagine, the indoor water park had like 500 stickers on it. And I think the public appreciated that. We ran into a little bit. Anytime you say affordable housing, people automatically think that means low income housing. So I did have to take a lot of time to differentiate that and make sure people understood what we were really doing. But for the most part, the public certainly. The good part is in downtown, you'll have your downtown business owners as ambassadors to help with the messaging and help, you know, fight off any criticism or pushback or anything. So we had minimal here.
Can everybody hear me? Because one of the comments was they can't hear me. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. So, we had the same experience. And I would say, conversely, these opportunities to engage with the public, which is a required part of the process, actually create opportunities for promoting the projects and creating really good feedback and support for the various projects. And, so, through the process, you're going to have literally engagement with hundreds of people in your community. And it's a way to really get those people, as I think was just said, as ambassadors for the projects that you're promoting. And so you can kind of turn these engagement sessions sort of into ways to promote the projects that you're going with.
We have another question for the mayor of Elmira that's asking specifically about the vacant Woolworths that was taken over by the city and how they went through that process and how it relates to the DRI.
I don't believe that was Elmira.
Okay.
Woolworth was a Middletown project.
Oh, okay.
And what was the question again?
They're just asking about how you went through that process, and was the acquisition part of the DRI or through working with the property owner? Or...
No, the acquisition, we own the building already, and there was discussion about demolishing the building and creating another void in our downtown in a row of buildings, and so that was dismissed right away. But the project also was like a business incubator where we are subsidizing the rent. The city continues to own the building. The rent for the building of the businesses. We had a competition. What was it called, Maria? Oh, Race for Space. That's what it was. I have my economic development people here. It was called Race for Space. And so we had a competition on what businesses would go into that building. And we ended up selecting 3. And they are in there at a rent subsidy for the 5 years and then 5-year increments going up to a total of 15 years. And the business, the building did go over budget. We had to put money into that project. But it was well worth it. It revitalized the whole end of the downtown where there was no parking and only walking access through connectivity through an alley into a parking area. Now people feel much safer walking through that alley, going to this business, and other buildings in that area now have been rehabbed. So, but that was a total of about $4 million that we spent on that project.
Great. We have a question asking about initiatives through the DRI that have created opportunities for workforce development within the community, in particular the inclusion of immigrants and new Americans.
Westbury is probably the most diverse of one of the most diverse communities on Long Island, and our housing stock, as well as all other aspects of the community, basically hits most of the price points from, very expensive homes to, rentals. And so, our TOD rezoning and, requires 10% to be affordable housing. And the threshold that we set was 80% of AMI. Long Island's a very high income area relative to, a lot of other places. And so the 80% is really allows you to reach people at the lower levels for our region, as opposed to other communities which kind of set it at 110, 120, even 130% of AMI. So we try to really do a truly affordable component, and we also incentivize the private developers who want to do more than 10% by allowing them higher densities on their buildings. So we've done some of that. We've tried to mirror or try to encourage the mirroring of in the new housing stock that's being developed, what we also already have in the community in terms of our existing housing stock.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Mohammed. Just to flash forward, another plug. We're going to do a webinar on that subject, the importance of refugees and immigrants to downtown revitalization and the way that DRI has created a more welcoming, open community in turn to refugees and immigrants. So to the attendees, where that's become a priority for us, if you have a large refugee immigrant contingent, we would encourage you to include them in the process, as some other communities have, like Syracuse and Utica. So I saw a question about climate friendly, if I could jump ahead.
Yep.
Climate friendly projects. Just want to highlight to the attendees that we have a very strong official partnership with NYSERDA, our Energy Research Authority agency, and NYPA, the New York Power Authority, to decarbonize our DRI projects. NYSERDA will provide consultants and assistance in creating green buildings, Energy Star buildings within the DRI, and NYPA provides priority electric vehicle charging stations to any DRI. So it's now built into our program, and you'll see that in the DRI and New York Forward Guidebook.
We
Seth,
did
what do we got?
participate. We did participate in the NYPA program in the downtown outside of the DRI, and we also had part of our DRI 4 million was or part of our green infrastructure project downtown, pervious pavement, new parking lot construction, a lot of new parking lot construction where we had the stormwater control and so we made I think it was a total of $6 million investment in that area. 4 million came from our DRI. So we were very conscious as we moved through the process of designing our downtown in a way that would lead us into a better future, actually, with green infrastructure. So we're looking forward to the part that you're talking about also with some of the large building owners, and we'd be more than happy to participate in that webinar.
We have one question I can quickly answer, asking, is the amount of money limited based on the size of the community? All DRI communities are awarded $10 million in funding. The New York Forward communities, which is, as Paul mentioned earlier, that program is intended sort of for smaller or more rural communities. That funding can range from $2.25 million award to $4.5 million award. But if you are awarded, that's the amount. It's not adjusted based on the size of your community.
And there are some very small DRI awardees like Watkins Glen. So there's some overlap between the two programs. If I'm not mistaken, you can apply for both, make your case for both New York Forward and DRI.
Yes, and that's not, I don't think it's too uncommon for communities to be sort of on the edge. They could probably make out with either award. And as Paul mentioned, there are small DRI communities, and there's, even though we're in the first round of New York Forward, there's relatively New York Forward communities that have received a lot of development interest through their New York Forward program. Let's see. there's a lot of we already addressed this a bit, but there are a lot of questions about the application process and whether there's any pointers anyone has about specifically making a clear and comprehensive and competitive application. Any thoughts on that?
I would just reiterate, tell your story, your specific story of your community and the needs that you have. Demonstrate maybe some of the things you've done to kind of prepare the community for going to the next step or the next level of redevelopment, and be specific. Be specific about the things that you want to accomplish. And I think that's how I think we were able to win the award. I'm sure there are probably other approaches, but I think you have to have a clear vision and a clear message and sell your story.
Yeah, I would agree. What Mayor Cavallaro just said. Tell your story, market it, know what your projects are, and you should be successful.
Just a little insight from somebody that helped develop the first iteration of DRI. You used the word story. We intended it to be a narrative-based application. Yes, it's technical in the sense that you have to show us your projects and how they're woven together, but also there's a story in every community. So we try to leave it open to hear your narrative. What is it about your place that you want to improve and expand and enhance?
Here's one I can answer as well. Can you submit percentage of completion payments under the grant? That depends on the project sponsor and which state agency is managing the project. They typically projects go to either Department of State, Homes and Community Renewal, or Empire State Development. DOS typically manages the public projects, and we do allow for progress reimbursements throughout the project life. So I think that's probably most of the folks here are asking about the public project aspect. So HCR and ESD, typically that's a fairly strict reimbursement only process.
I just saw that one of my colleagues, Lissa, had mentioned that we have the applications online if you want to take a look at them. Strategic implementation plans from past awardees are online. All of them, and our webinars are available to help you through the application process.
Here's one that I'll call out. Has there been any resistance by people to increase density in your downtown area? I think, the narratives we heard earlier really spoke to the benefits of adding some density to downtowns that have tended to hollow out over the past few decades. But do any of the mayors want to specifically talk to that?
Yeah, we changed our zoning to allow for upper floor residential. And we also at the same time prohibited first floor residential to encourage commercial development. And that was a big step to the whole idea of not only getting people downtown, but getting people downtown at the right hours. Because what we experienced before were some of the public employees and banks and everything that were open during the day, nobody here at night. So getting people living and working downtown was our goal. So that change in zoning was an important component for us in redeveloping the upper floors of buildings and making the building more viable. And offices and downtown are really not going to relocate in a third floor walk up. So we made that change, and those same building owners then participated in the facade program. And now we took these ugly vacant buildings, upper floors, and are now beautiful structures restored to some historic standard. So it was really a positive move for us, the rezoning.
In DRI in Elmira, we actually, our anchor project was at 100 West Water Street, where we put in market rate apartments, and those apartments were filled very quickly. We subsequently did a housing study and found out that we needed additional living in the downtown area, which has spurred additional building in the downtown. Again, we have the Reedman Apartments over by Lecom that have over 100 market rate apartments that are basically almost to capacity. And we've had some other development and renovation of upper level apartments in the downtown. So the DRI definitely helped, in my opinion, spur that growth. And of course, with Lecom, the medical school coming to Elmira, also helped with that. So.
Any more, Steph?
There's one last one about whether the webinar is recorded. Yes, it will be recorded, and we will post it on the DOS website. So it will be available at a later date for review. And that's the last question, unless there's anything anyone wants to add. Or Paul, if you have any specific thoughts or questions.
Not questions, just one comment to follow up on the inquiry about climate-friendly buildings, green buildings in the DRI. There is a webinar coming up on the decarbonization green building component that I mentioned of DRI. So you'll all get, if you received the invitation to this one, you'll get that invitation to check on our website and our Facebook and social media. So that'll provide a little more insight. I don't have any questions unless the mayors have questions or comments, parting comments. No. Well, listen, I hope this has been helpful for the attendees. It's certainly been helpful for me to hear the different communities on one screen. I'm glad you mayors were able to share your experiences. I think there'll be more of that type of peer-to-peer learning in the future. And I'll end with this point of emphasis. The future, we're in the 7th year of this program, both of these programs. We reached the $1 billion mark in DRI and New York Forward investments. But the future of the program really depends on the future quality of the applications. That's why we're encouraging you to apply. If you filed a letter of intent to utilize the consultants that we provide, who will give you insights into the application process, some experience that they have had with other communities. And so submit an application, be persistent. At a forum we held in Syracuse, the mayor of Fulton, not far from Oswego, said that they went through 3 application processes. And the first process helped them to establish a vision. Just putting an application together helped them get a vision for their community. And as they proceeded, their applications became better. So they took 3 tries at it, and they availed themselves of all the help that we had. And now they're another successful DRI. So please utilize all the materials that we have and the consultants that are available, because again, really the future of this program, it's got a tremendous past, but the future depends on the new applicants. And we think that we've expanded that pot of applicants significantly with New York Forward by emphasizing the smaller and rural communities. So if there's nothing else, I just want to thank the mayors for their insights, for making this program such a success. And we look forward to seeing the next round of applications. Thank you.